Hey everybody, my name is Brian, and this is my SPED talk on GPS tracking on Android. And my project this semester is called TriTracker, which is a triathlon training app. The GPS operation uses the position of 3 or more satellites and their distance from the GPS device to determine latitude, longitude, elevation, and time. Here is an example of what Google Maps can use to help calculate the distance of a route. I used some of the functions in Google Maps and some of it I exported elsewhere from the internet. This is the code associated with the track run switch. As you can see here, the tracking is off. But when we switch it on, it will initialize each of these 3 values as 0. And if the build version is greater than or equal to 23, and the find location permissions isn't granted, then it will request those permissions from the user. Otherwise, it'll start location service. The onRequest permissions result function is called when the app needs permissions from the user to use GPS. As you can see here, it'll just show up a screen that says allow or deny. If the specific permissions is equal to the grant results in the first spot in the array, it'll start location services. Otherwise, it'll display to the user, say, give me permissions. My start location service does what other functions do, just make sure that the app has the correct permissions, specifically the find location permissions, which is from the GPS, and the course locations as well gives permissions for the app to use Wi-Fi, which is not quite as accurate as the GPS. And then here, all we do is create the location requests. And I have 2 different intervals. The default interval is 1 second. The fast interval is half a second. So it'll basically drop a waypoint between those 2 intervals. And here, of course, we're setting the priority to be GPS if it is available. This is my location callback function. This is basically called every time the start location service is called. And all it does is sets the current location to the location set by the GPS. If the previous location is null, it will aggregate the total. It'll use my distance formula using the longitude and latitude of the previous and current location and add it into total distance. And this will set the current time here. And if the previous time is not equal to 0, then it'll also aggregate the track time by simply subtracting the current time from the previous time. And then last but not least, it'll set the previous time to the current time. And that's basically one leg of the route. And here we're just simply using a calendar, time, a day to convert it into time. And then we have to convert that into minutes and seconds. And we're going to display this specifically on the input, the user input called runtime and the user input called run distance. Well, this is where the total distance will show using 2 decimal places. And then, of course, last but not least, like here, the previous location will now equal the current location. And this here is your pretty basic distance formula. I just got this straight from the trusty old internet, and it just takes latitude, 2 latitude and 2 longitude coordinates to calculate the distance. Of course, first you have to convert from degrees to radians, and it uses the Haversine formula, which is simply this: C equals 2 times math, the arc sine of the square root of a, which you get from here, and to get d-lon and d-lat, you have to subtract the longitude of both coordinates and the latitude of both coordinates. And last but not least, the radius needs to be calculated in miles, not in kilometers, and then the result is c times r. And last but not least is my add run button right here. And all it really does is convert everything into the correct format that the data should be in. It uses my run model class to make an object out of it, and then that run model object is added to the database helper through this function here, add run workout. And last but not least, it'll show that data from the database helper. It'll show that here. Thank you so much for watching this presentation, and I wish you all luck after you graduate. Have a great day.